We will now hear from Celldrop team members Ben Noren, a Ph.D. candidate in chemical engineering, graduate minor in gender and women's studies, and John Oakey, a UW professor of chemical engineering. Celldrop uses a patented cell delivery process to quickly and permanently regenerate tissue by encasing, some word I can't actually say, stem cells in something they described as Jello. So really, let's just turn it over to the people who actually know about this awesome product. And judges, okay, Stephen, I'm letting you kick us off so that Shane doesn't steal all the time this time. So Stephen, take us away.
Good. Do we have our Ben and John on? I'm not seeing them, but
they are. Yep, they're both here. I can see them.
Okay.
Muted them.
Yeah. Well, hi guys. I think everyone enjoyed both your discussion and the presentation yesterday. I spent some time thinking about this. It's a fascinating area. But if you leave the world of horses for just a second and think about people, orthopedics, and stem cells, I would venture that stem cells in orthopedics, and particularly in ligament healing, have a very mixed perception, publicly and medically, as to the real efficacy of stem cells and lack of studies and that kind of thing. So I wonder if the same thing is true in the horse world and what you think about that and how you would combat that. Is that a well-known, very accepted therapy, or are you going uphill a little bit with stem cells in general, whether they're ligament type or encapsulated type or whatever? Sorry for the long question, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the question, Stephen. And that's a big reason why we wanted to participate in the NSF I-Core program, was to actually find out what real life practitioners thought about this. So we knew if we had a product. And honestly, we went into the competition looking at orthopedic surgeons as our target market. And we found that because of lack of faith and because of entrenched treatment where they have an incentive to continue to do what works fine, but isn't particularly innovative, it wasn't a good market for us. And we found in transitioning to veterinarians that almost 99% of vets who treat horses in general across the board use stem cell therapy already. The veterinary market is very, very different. The type of medicine that they employ, I think, because there's a lot less restrictions in it, and there's not a huge financial incentive for veterinarians to perform these costly surgeries or more costly procedures, because they just don't make that much more money from them. They want things that are as straightforward and effective as possible. And the big problem with stem cells is that they're unreliable, right? So sometimes they work fantastic in certain people, and other times they don't do anything. And a big part of that, like recent research is showing, has to do with the fact that they don't stay in one place. So they quickly migrate. There's certain injuries where they die almost immediately. And our research, which is specifically tailored to understanding how cells react with the specific environment, shows that when you just take cells and you shoot them into an injury, they can't attach and engraft into the tissue. They don't have the appropriate genes to know to attach that and basically to start producing these chemicals to induce healing. And so we were like, well, what if we could sort of force them to have this environment by encapsulating them to begin with, to kind of trick them into thinking that they are in this natural environment. And it turns out it works really well. We can basically create a synthetic ligament where we mimic the mechanical properties of that ligament, how stretchy it is, what it looks like to the cell. And when we put just plain old stem cells into that, they can attach and they basically run around in little circles and then die. When we put them in our encapsulated hydrogel droplets, basically they're cells in tiny jello marbles, right? When we put the marbles in there with the cells in them, they just persist because we're tricking them into thinking they are in their natural niche in the body. And because of that, they just sit there, they stay alive, they pump out their trophic factors, all is well. And we can maintain these cells in these droplets for weeks. And we are currently working on, in an academic sense, looking at how those cells respond to different stiffnesses of those droplets. If we make them degrade faster, sometimes we can create an environment where the cells will produce a lot of these chemical factors that induce healing. So we're slowly patenting these processes around that. We're about to submit some more IP in that area.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, next, John, with the question. Spencer, we'll let you can have like 20 minutes if you want it. Shane says no. Spencer didn't get much time last time. Spencer, I think you're still on mute right now too, but so we'll hand it over to you.
Your last explanation answered a lot of what I was asking, but I want to take on that pretty scientific theme. So my question was going to be, so how do the cells come out of the gel capsules? But you pretty much said they don't need to, because the trophic improvements just diffuse through the cell membrane or the gel membrane.
There's big holes in these gels. We specifically fabricate them so they have what's known as macromolecular structure. And so when we're polymerizing them, you can think about it as like tunnels, much smaller than a cell, but much bigger than just the molecules that make up the material.
It's like a big filter.
Yeah, it's like a big filter.
That answered a lot of what I had. So now going to the next step. So you talked about an animal trial, and that's really what you want to get underway. You alluded to a little bit to the treatment in humans as being very hard to overcome, and I get it. Trying to develop any sort of treatment or something is very intense, and possibly seeing animals as your bridge to that eventually, which would be an enormous market, correct?
Oh yeah.
So, anyway, starting with the animals at the rat level, which is where you're starting, right?
Correct.
You mentioned 1 year. Why? Explain in more detail how you plan to achieve a 1 year goal and be ready to put this into high-end multi-million-dollar racehorse.
Sure. So I think that my timeline was based on the fact that we can conduct a preliminary safety study in small animals in about 3 months. We don't actually have to look at the healing in these small animals. Simply, we inject the cells, and about a week later, we sacrifice the animal and then perform histology on a few key organs that, if there was a toxic effect, this would show up in. This is a very straightforward procedure. It's done in literally every single biomedical or drug development program, and it's kind of like the baseline to look for this. And it's just a standard. And so that's relatively straightforward and easy. It's just something we need to do. And then from there, implementing it in equine trials. So we have been talking to a collaborator who he did his veterinary residency at the CU in Denver, Gustavo Zanato, and he's recently transitioned to a professorship at Texas A&M. But he's a veterinarian who specializes in basically horse orthopedics, and we've got this like approximately 9-month equine study quote from him and from Texas A&M, basically running a standard trial of 20 horses, and approximately how long that would take. So it's like a ramp up about 6 months of having after injecting the animal to determine the therapeutic efficacy, and then like being able to analyze those results at the end of that trial. And that's where that timeline comes from. Also, the quote, it sounds like it's going to be between $750,000 and $900,000 to conduct that study, for everything, for employees, housing the horses, the whole deal.
Okay, Spencer, are you good with, is that all your questions?
So $1 million is where you need to be to get everything to feel good to launch this?
Yeah, approximately about $1 million. Yeah, that's our
study and really be ready to market and
correct. Yeah.
That's all I got.
Thanks, Spencer. It's expensive to feed those horses.
It is. Housing them is the most expensive. So.
Yeah, I believe it. Okay, what other judges? Walden, go ahead.
So my question is, like, after yesterday finding out that you could freeze this for a long time or even potentially pull cells off of, even in this scenario, the Triple Crown winners and resell them to up and coming horses for maybe even more stability, I realized that yesterday we never even really talked about numbers about what this is going to cost or what people would actually pay you for to do this, right? So you run us through the numbers and the financials on what somebody will actually give you money to do.
Yeah, I'd love to. So we started off figuring all this out based on interviews with a bunch of veterinarians through ICOR. And what we basically ask them is, how much pain are you guys in, and what area of equine athletics or the equine industry in general sort of needs this the most. And what we found out is that every time a racehorse misses a competition, that owner loses anywhere on the low end $50,000, more like $100,000. Sometimes it's like if a Triple Crown or a fancy horse misses a race, that owner will lose like $3 to $5 million just from that one race. So there's just huge amounts of money on the line for these. And so what we kind of did is we took the race starts in total for the whole country, and there's about 300,000 race starts. And then we broke that down into average earnings per start based on the statistics for horses. So the horse race industry works kind of like the stock market, where every single piece of it is broken down into data, so that then people can use that data to make informed decisions on how they're going to spend their money or how they're going to basically invest in that market. And so it makes it really easy to do these financials. But based on that, we said that, all right, the vets were quoting on about a 80% incidence of suspensory ligament injury. Of these, approximately 20% are just, they put the horse out to pasture, it's done, can no longer compete. And they said that generally this will take place about halfway through a horse's career. And so based on those statistics and the total amount of money which circulates through the industry per year, which is about $12 billion, we find that if our product is able to reduce the amount of missed starts by half, so in other words, improve healing efficacy by 100% faster than it currently is, we will be able to add about $36,000 per horse per season. And so based on those numbers is how we did our financials in order to determine that, if we have anywhere from a $7,000 to $12,000 value add, we are significantly improving the ability of owners to make money on their horses. But at the same time, we're still having a big chunk of value that we're getting out of that. So if they're saving $36,000 and paying us $10,000, they're pretty happy about that.
Well, I saw in the cash flow statement that it was units sold 9, total cash inflow $90,000, right? Yeah. But that's where I think the variable is if it. And this is something we started to hit on yesterday, but it never really got truly answered. But is this a proactive mindset, or is this something that a horse gets hurt and then we implement it, compared to you take a healthy horse, you take out the cells ahead of time, freeze them for as long as they want, just like you would a trophy bull or a trophy horse that you're going to breed, freeze it for as long as you want. And then if it does get hurt, it acts as more of an insurance policy to speed things back up. Right. So
yeah. So
active mindset or a current times mindset?
So it is the financial calculations are based around a sort of insurance mindset, where if an animal gets hurt, you inject it and it heals much faster and has a much higher probability of being able to compete at its full potential. That being said, we did investigate this as a proactive treatment, and veterinarians were interested. But it's really hard to predict when a horse is going to be injured. And so it's hard to, they were basically yeah, we could do this with every horse, but then we wouldn't be able to necessarily charge as much because it would be an every horse thing. And would it really help to prevent injury? Maybe. And that's a lot more complicated study to really nail down, right? Like if it's going to work proactively.
I guess that's where my mindset was about with like premium versus just like base, right? Like
exactly.
A premium model where you can pay for an upgraded horse's like cells to inject, you're going to pay more for that than if it's just some horse on your range, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
So
yeah.
When it comes to just the rollout process of this, I mean, looking at your first year, even in the first quarter, once you receive funding, it's basically 3 horses a month, or 3 horses a month that you're going after. Like, is this just you, or are you going to bring on a team to help you with this rollout? Like what's that look like once you're past the testing phase?
Yeah, it's definitely. So what our plan is to partner with Advanced Regenerative Therapy in Fort Collins. And that's going to help us with those sales channels. I conservatively estimated only, I think it's 3 horses in the first month. And then it's like 5 or something after that. And that was just based on the fact that we need to convince people that our therapy is better and it's worth that extra expense at the beginning, right? And so I'm not going to expect everybody to just jump on board without them having firsthand experience or like hearing from an actual race owner or veterinarian that, hey, this works great, like you should spend this extra money. And that's why that conservative estimate is there. But we will have access to ART sales channels. And they currently treat approximately 300 horses per year. And based on talking to people and my best guess, I think we can reach about 2 out of 3 of those current horses in our first year. And that's where that 200 number comes from.
Gotcha. And then last question is because I'm a ranch kid and I know like my dad's on the PRCA stuff and he's like
cool.
rodeo and all that. But I mean, he's got horses that are worth more than most people's cars, right? So like they're all insured. Have you ever thought about going through the marketing channels of partnering up with an insurance company that offers horse insurance, stuff like that, to actually roll this out so that like you have a bigger customer base from day one?
I love that. It's something that I haven't looked through in depth. I was vaguely aware that existed, but yeah, that's a brilliant idea. One second.
Okay. Well, no, I guess it wasn't a question, it was more of a comment. But,
no, I love that. Yeah, and as somebody who didn't grow up on a ranch, I think that like having your input on that is super valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
That's awesome. That's going to be good fodder for the 50th anniversary when we invite Ben back to share his story, and he'll be like, and then Walden told me insurance and I wrote it on this napkin and then I made $1 million. Okay, awesome. Love where this is going. Walden, do you have any more questions for Ben? Okay. Other judges. Okay, Shane, we're ready. Bring the heat here.
I'll try to go fast since Mandy's going to put me out to pasture.
We do have about 8 minutes left, so just fair warning, 8 minutes, and we haven't heard from Susan yet either.
I'll try to answer fast.
Plenty of time. So it sounds like how big do you see this? I mean, if you hit all the milestones and that you want and grow this and be good at what you're doing, is this company, it sounds like it's out of Wyoming quickly and it has 4 or 5 of you working for it, and maybe it's like a line, it's Celldrop, and different places around the country will carry this product, so to speak. Is that how you envision it, or will Celldrop have this campus in Kentucky and people will bring their horses in, or tell us a little bit about how you see the vision of this company going?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So my vision is, I think that Wyoming is an extraordinary place to have a company located. And the cool thing about our product is that we don't need to establish ourselves like in any specific epicenter of where we're selling, because we can ship it anywhere, right? And most vets operate, like they're pretty diverse depending on what equine market you're going after. And our initial implementation was in racehorses because of the economics of it. But from there, I think we can fairly quickly expand to virtually every area of equine athletics, including, I mean, Wyoming is huge with Western events, right? Like rodeo here is a big deal. And I talked to like 3 or 4 people who were like, oh my God, if I could get this from my barrel horse and race, it would totally be a game changer. Apparently, horses who do barrel racing injure their suspensory ligaments all the time because there's so much torque going around those sharp corners. It messes them up. So I see it as being a very much like company that we have a center here in Wyoming and that we're able to treat horses in Wyoming. But our ultimate goal is still to transition this into the human market, in which case we, depending on regulation, will have to take a slightly different approach with how we sell it. But hopefully we can still have that main human market as well anchored here in Wyoming.
Okay. If obviously you talked earlier about $1 million would get you where you need to go. In terms of this contest, obviously there's a big amount of money, but it's still limited resource. What's your hope to get first, second, if we chose as judges to delineate first, second, and third, like, here's your trophy, you won the contest, you got second, or money? Is it money, or hey, I placed first, a little more important?
I mean, I think that what's most important for us is to be able to bring ourselves to a place where we can like basically like, hey, we have this data, right? Because it's all about the data, and that's what attracts investment of like $1 million, right? And so I think that if we can like get the funds to run this initial study and kind of like launch ourselves into being like, hey, we have this safety data in small animals, we're good to go, and present that to basically write that into our grants, be able to present that to angel investors and have that confidence, then that is the most important. Although I wouldn't say that, not getting first place is immaterial, because I mean, it's great to be able to be like, hey, like other people who have a massive amount of experience in this area believe in us and believe in our company. And that is important as well. That's
okay. So $1 million is your gold standard. What's your silver and your bronze? Is your bronze the $3,000? Is that what it said for your small?
10,000. 10,000 for the small animal study.
Okay, and so is that a bronze or is that a silver? Is there an amount below that that if you walked away and you still had, you'd be like, oh, I got third place. I got bronze. I didn't completely lose, but
sure. I think that in order to complete this small animal study, it will cost about $10,000. But if that being said, if we get 7 out of that $10,000, then I have submitted a phase 0 SBIR that we're sort of waiting to get funding for that. There's, I'll just keep working at it until we have that $10,000. It's really in the time. So we can move forward with this immediately if we have that $10,000. If we have a portion of that, the smaller the portion, the longer it will be to raise those initial funds.
Okay, we'll go to Susan. We have about 3 minutes left. Sorry, Susan.
Okay, no, this is a short one. I think I said yesterday, Ben, that you've done an excellent job really laying out the steps on where you're going and where you're trying to get to, this sequential steps. But as we've talked further, it makes me more curious about that when you step into the human aspect of it, the human usage. And is there anything that you need to do now to protect your ability to step into that from the animals into the humans? And what is it more specifics around moving from animals to humans? I'm assuming they don't just say this works on horses, let's try it on people.
No, that would be great though.
Yeah.
So the FDA, so the short answer, this is a really, really long answer, but the shortest answer possible is that the FDA does every sort of new product on a case-by-case basis. And so that involves basically once you have data that you feel personally is sufficient to approach the FDA, you're like, hey, I have this data. It could be literally anything. And I want to seek like my product being scheduled as this particular product that will eventually be sold on the market. And that it takes kind of a team of people. It takes lawyers, it takes FDA consultants, it takes scientists, and it's incredibly expensive to do with what would appear to be a biologic therapy that we are proposing, which is why nothing exists and is why these companies kind of shady stem cell companies exist right now, because there's no good method for people like us who actually care about the hard science of this to make an FDA approved product. The last person who tried I think they spent like $700 million and they failed in the end. So they did not launch in horses though. They kind of took a massive investment approach to go right into humans. But I believe that if we can show this efficacy in horses, that we will have like a wealth of data and we're going to have like a big trial. And a lot of the things FDA don't like is that it's hard to get a huge trial size in people because the bigger the trial, the more expensive it is. But if you have, if you're helping 10,000 horses, then you have a giant trial size in an animal that's very much considered equivalent to humans. And I see it as a great stepping stone because of that.
And the patents would apply across?
Yeah, the patents are around the product and its efficacy in cells. They're not specifically to any like one cell. And so I just submitted 3 more of the invention disclosures surrounding it to the university, and it's something that we're continually building out on to get more and more specific as we learn more. But our core IP is just that we can put live cells in these specific droplets and inject them into any sort of an organism. It's not a specific type.
And one more clarifier, your small animal study that you're going to do, that's not to test if the technology is working. It's more just to test on toxicity or I'm not sure how you described it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Cool.
Okay, I think we're just right, a little bit over time, so I think we'll call it at that. Excellent job, Ben, answering a lot of wide variety of questions. So round of applause for a great presentation and questions.